Hi everyone, welcome to the Pet Education Partnership webinar. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes just to allow people a couple of minutes to join us. But thank you for joining us, those that have joined so far. We'll just give it a minute or two. For those that you have joined us, we're just giving it one more minute to allow people to join and we'll get started very shortly. Okay, so hello everybody. And thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to share with you the findings of the Pet Education Partnership's first ever nationally representative children and pet survey commissioned by PEP and carried out by YouGov in late 2024. This presentation is all about the numbers that we've got, it's all about the stories, and it's all about the potential of what they reveal. So we're going to explore how young people across the UK relate to animals in their lives and how that shapes their behaviour, empathy, and understanding. But first, I'd just like to introduce today's panel. So I'm Anna Baggett, and I'm from PDSA, and I'm the education lead. Dave?
I'm Dave Allen. I'm from the RSPCA and I'm the head of prevention and education.
I'm
Kerry?
Shelley Brown and I'm the head of education at Cats Protection.
Thanks. And I'm Kerry and I am the manager at education manager at Blue Cross.
And I'm Beth and I'm the research lead for the National Dog Survey at Dogs Trust.
Thank you, everyone. So before we get started, we've just got a few bits of housekeeping as usual. So we are actually recording today's webinar just for those that couldn't make today's session, and everyone will be emailed a recording tomorrow. You may have noticed that your microphones and cameras have been disabled, just because we're recording. We are encouraging everybody to ask questions throughout the session. So we've got the option of the Q&A box. We've also got a chat box, but if you could use the Q&A box, that would be really appreciated. So let's begin. So the reason we commissioned this research, as professionals working in education or the animal welfare sector, or even as parents, you may already have some expectations of how children perceive and treat animals. But what's striking is just how little solid data we have about this group. We realised that there was a gap in the literature around children's behaviours, knowledge, and attitudes around pets, particularly with those aged 7 to 11. And historically, most education programmes use assumptions about what we think children need to know. So, with this survey, we aim to generate evidence-based insights that would help us better serve our audiences and ultimately the pets and people in their lives.
So who are PEP? PEP is a unique collaboration between 8 of the UK's leading animal welfare organisations, featuring Blue Cross, Cats Protection, Dogs Trust, PDSA, RSPCA, Scottish SPCA, USPCA, and Wood Green. And together we're working to make animal welfare education accessible to every 5 to 11-year-old across the UK. We came together across around a shared vision, and that vision is to inspire lifelong compassion for animals and to provide accessible animal welfare education to every child aged 5 to 11 in the UK. We are united in our commitment and believe that through collaboration, we could go further than we ever could alone.
So first of all, I'll just talk a little bit about how the survey was conducted. So we worked with YouGov to gain a nationally representative sample of children aged 7 to 11 from across the whole of the UK. We surveyed 1,024 children between the 7th and 29th of November 2024. And the sample was representative of the UK's children in terms of their gender, age, region, and social background. And as you can see on the slide, YouGov stratified panel sampling enabled balanced representation across age groups and genders. So most children surveyed lived in England, with the rest from Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So 81% lived in urban areas, 7 in town or fringe locations, and 12 in rural settings. And then YouGov also provided data on household income and social deprivation using the index of multiple deprivation. And this allowed us to analyse important patterns by socioeconomic status.
Brilliant. So thanks for that, Beth. Let's look at one of our core questions. So how many children actually live with pets that took part in the survey? So according to the children surveyed, 65% live with at least one pet. So 40% dogs, 29% cats, and 4% rabbits. So what's really interesting in more than 1 in 10 children live in households with both a cat and a dog. So the great thing about this is it really shows us that many children are living with pets and having that regular contact with animals, which is fantastic. So interestingly, we noticed some significant patterns. So children in southern England, 45%, were more likely to own a dog than those in northern England, with 33%. And actually, children in more deprived areas, so those areas on the index of multiple deprivation between 1 and 3, were more likely to own a dog at 46% than those in more affluent areas. So this does challenge some assumptions, actually, and it does suggest that pet ownership isn't higher in more affluent families, and actually it's equally or even more common in lower income communities.
So before I present my slides, I'd really like to set animal welfare education within the values education approach. I'm going to take 3 values and just talk through them quickly. So firstly, curiosity. And I think the future of animal welfare education is certainly secure because quite clearly you're showing a lot of curiosity by being with us here this evening. Social media must be awash tonight with different fads and gossip, and I'm sure that Netflix has something good on tonight. But thank you for being with us. So that's really important that we develop curiosity, an important value. And then I've got 2 more. I've got compassion and caring. Now, probably for all of you, that's not just for animals, but that's for fellow human beings and for the planet as well. The concept of one welfare probably isn't unknown to you. And then my final point before I go on to talk about the welfare needs is that you've probably not a teenager, so that you've already worked out that actions have consequences that can be good and bad. Doing or not doing something, providing one of the welfare needs or not providing it, will have consequences not just for the animal, but for you as well. And I've done this because what we'll see as we go forward is that it's important to get animal welfare education for everyone, those that own pets and those that don't, because there was different awareness and different attitudes were presented as we looked at the survey. So Anna, you can relax now. I'm going back onto the script. And at Pet Education Partnership, we base our education on the 5 welfare needs. Now, even the framework that we use for learning has changed. When I started, we talked about the 5 freedoms, which had been developed in 1979 for farm animals through Falk. Then in 2006, the Animal Welfare Act came in and the welfare needs became a legal approach. And now we're moving on again, and I'll talk about this in a little while, onto the 5 domains, which is a much better structure for being able to assess an animal's welfare. So the 5 welfare needs are a suitable environment that is clean, safe and comfortable, a suitable diet with the right food and constant access to water. It still surprises me that our inspectorate report they often find in homes they've got dehydrated animals where this access is not being made available. The ability to express normal behavior like digging, scratching or playing, to be housed with or apart from other animals depending on their species and social needs, and being protected from pain, suffering, injury and disease. And this includes animal care. I often compare the importance of animals going to the vet as us going to the dentist. We don't always notice that we've got a problem with our teeth, and so a regular checkup is important. So that's something that's I often follow. So these are widely taught, and rightly so. But at PEP, we also go one step further to the 6th dimension, the mental state. So alongside the 5 welfare needs, we teach children about animals' mental state. And this comes from the 5 domains model that I've already mentioned. Not quite so helpful for us when we're trying to educate, but professionals across the globe assess not just whether an animal is surviving, but it's thriving. And this was the one criticism of the welfare needs approach. It was an input-output model. This one goes much further. So we asked children to consider, is the animal happy? Are they feeling relaxed, secure? Are they curious? Or are they, on the other hand, are they frightened, bored, or frustrated? So this mental state is the result of the other 5 welfare needs being met or not. It gives children a bigger emotional framework to understand animal well-being. So why we teach this? Adding mental state to the conversation has 3 key benefits. It helps children build empathy and not just responsibility. It encourages them to think about pets as individuals with feelings and not just creatures with checklists. It really does bring out the importance of sentience. It gives teachers and parents a way to link animal welfare to broader themes like emotional literacy, rights, respect, and well-being. So all of our pet resources, from classroom activities through to the upcoming dog safety animation, are designed to reflect this full picture and this framework and approach. Not just what pets need physically, but what helps them feel safe, secure, and emotionally well. This is especially important when we're teaching about the less expressive animals, and this will come up in the survey as well. Animals like reptiles, fish, or small mammals, where discomfort or stress can be harder to spot and sometimes by the species is deliberately hidden, especially if they're prey species. So when we talk about the 5 welfare needs, we're also inviting children to look deeper, to ask not just, is my pet okay, but is my pet happy? And that is a real powerful shift in mindset. So what did we ask? What did we do in the survey? We asked children how important it is that pets receive certain care. We asked them about things like a clean and safe place to live, the right food and clean water, opportunities to exercise and play, those regular vet checkups, feeling happy and relaxed. And the results are, in fact, heartening. 85 to 95% of children rated all 9 pet welfare needs as at least somewhat important. The most commonly recognized needs were a safe and comfortable place to live at 95%, and then proper food and clean water at 93%. Even the least selected welfare needs, such as the choice to have animal company, was at 85, and this still showed high concern. But not all children scored equally. Children who live with pets were consistently more likely to view each welfare need as important. And this was true with girls and children from higher income households. For example, 92% of children from households earning over 50K rated exercise as important, compared with only 83% from households earning less than 25K. And the same trend appeared around emotional well-being. So this tells us that exposure and environment shape how children view animal welfare and animal care.
Thank you, Dave. So now, where do children learn about how to care for their pets? So we asked them to choose from a list of sources. The top 4, as you'll see on the slide, were parents and carers at 44%, vets at 43%, the internet at 36%, and YouTube at 33%. Only 6% of children answered that they don't get any information about pet care, so I think that is actually really encouraging for our audience. But trust, as we know, is quite different from exposure. So when we ask children who they trust the most, I think a lot of people in our audience today will be pleased to know that vets came out at 53%, parents 40%, and teachers, if we've got teachers joining us today, not so good at 16%, along with the internet also at 16%. So this highlights the opportunity for educators and trusted adults to be more present in these conversations. Conversely, children without pets were much more likely to trust YouTube as a source, and some of them actually answered that they didn't know who to trust. Children were also asked, how would you like to learn about pets in the future? Their top answers, as again you'll see from the slide, are watching videos at 43%, having a pet expert visit their school, like a lot of our charities do, at 42%, watching television programmes at 38%, and lessons from teachers at 31%. just 5% of children said that they weren't interested in learning more about pets. So the appetite is definitely there for animal welfare education. We just need to meet the children where they are, so digitally and within schools.
Thanks, Anna. So here's a key question. Do children believe that animals are sentient and have feelings? Well, 72% believe that dogs have feelings. 64% said the same for cats, but only 23% said the same about fish or lizards. And when it came to communication, the same pattern appeared. Children recognized dogs and cats as being more able to communicate than the smaller and less expressive species. And this has highlighted a gap and a teaching opportunity. Pet-owning children were also more likely to believe that their own pet had feelings than that general species did. So, for example, 92% of dog owners believed that their dog had feelings, but only 74% said dogs in general did. So this could reveal the power of personal experience in shaping beliefs. One of the most striking patterns we observed in the survey was how children's beliefs about whether animals can feel emotions like happiness, sadness, or fear varied depending on where they live. Children living in urban areas were less likely to believe that animals such as dogs, cats, rabbits, and horses have feelings. And this was also true for children in the most deprived areas. Children living in London and the northwest of England were significantly less likely to believe that species like cats, dogs, rabbits, hamsters, fish, snakes, and birds had feelings. But on the flip side, children in Yorkshire and Humber and the southwest of England were most likely to believe that a wide range of species, including smaller or less expressive animals, could feel emotions. So for us, that helps us think about helping young people understand sentience being at the heart of empathy and ethical behavior towards animals. So, for example, if a child doesn't believe a rabbit or a guinea pig can feel sadness or stress, they're less likely to understand why gentle handling or a quiet space is important.
So let's look at willingness to help animals in need. So the good news is that most children showed a strong desire to help animals in distress. 88% said they would want to help a pet that looked unhappy. And out of those, 58% strongly agreed. And then 90% said they would help a pet that looked unwell or injured, with 64% strongly agreeing, which is great news. This empathy was even more pronounced among children who lived with pets. So 94% of pet-owning children said they would want to help an injured pet, compared to 81% of non-pet owners. So there were also some really interesting demographic differences here as well when we looked at this question. So girls were more likely than boys to express a desire to help pets. So 92% of girls said they'd be happy to help an unhappy pet, compared to 86% boys. And children in rural or town areas were more likely to agree they'd help an unhappy pet, with 94%, compared to those who lived in urban areas at 87%. So these findings really suggest that empathy towards animals is really widely spread, which is brilliant. But it's also strengthened by direct experience with pets, gender, and the environment. So this really emphasises the value of early and inclusive animal welfare education, particularly for those children that may have limited access to pets, to make sure that we nurture that real compassionate behaviour that we want to see.
But we all know that pet interactions are not always positive. 76% of children had experienced at least one negative interaction. And these can be exemplified through a dog jumping up at them, that was 29%, being scratched, 27%, or being growled at, 25%. Now, dogs were involved in 73% of these experiences. Now, they aren't necessarily severe, but they are meaningful. They shape how safe children feel around animals.
Great. So now let's look at more information on bite experiences. So while many children reported positive interactions with pets, a significant number experienced being bitten, often by familiar animals and in everyday situations. So this really echoes the other research that's out there. So 21% of children said they had been bitten by a pet, 10% by a pet that they live with, 8% by a family or friend's pet, and 6% by a stranger's pet. So it's important just to note here that children could select more than one source for this. So amongst those that were bitten, 44% were actually bitten by dogs. And 63% of those who reported they were bitten by dogs required medical attention, and 7% were even hospitalised overnight. So until now, dog bite data amongst children has primarily been focused on the more severe incidents that require hospital treatment. So the great thing about this survey is it actually provides us a real unique insight into the lower situations that are happening in those bites that are maybe less severe. It gives us a better idea of those everyday experiences that children might be facing when they're interacting with their pets in their homes. So again, interestingly, most bites happened with routine interactions. So often when children were playing with their pets, feeding, stroking, and this highlights that much needed education where actually children and young people might be misinterpreting how their pet is behaving and what behaviours they are showing when they're feeling maybe fear or some discomfort. When looking at who was most affected, children from lower income households were more likely to report bite incidents, and many of these pets were known to the child again. So they either lived with them or again, they were family or friends. So the data really confirms what many of us believe here in this room, that welfare professionals, that many bites are underreported and much more widespread than we actually realise. So we hope that through that early accessible education that we can really help children to recognise the importance of dog body language in particular and understanding behaviour and when to give their dog space. So we can hopefully reduce dog bite incidents and create those safer, more respectful relationships between children and dogs.
Thanks, Kerry. So now we're going to talk about pet care and learning at home. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is Pester Power. So how children actually get their pets. Of the 671 pet owners, children reflected on the following species: dog, cat, rabbit, fish, guinea pig, or other. And the percentages should be on the slide. So among the pet owners, among the child pet owners, 36 asked for their pet a lot, and 48% said they wanted a friend to play with, and 48% also said that a pet looked cool or cute. So children in more deprived and urban areas were more likely to ask for pets than those in rural or affluent areas. Among pet owning children, one of the optional activities they could select was the dressing up of name of pet, name or type of pet. And here's what we found. So 18% of children said that they enjoyed dressing up their pet. Whilst this was less common than other activities like saying their pet is cute and cool, 70%, playing with their pet, 77%, giving them cuddles, 70%, and taking pictures with them, 46%. It should still be considered concerning because whilst 18% seems like a small number, it's not insignificant and it opens up some important educational conversations. So some pets may tolerate clothing or costumes, whilst others may find it distressing or restrictive. Children may not always recognize the signs of discomfort, like trying to wriggle away, freezing, or hiding. So there's an implication for education here. There's an opportunity to teach children how to tell if a pet is enjoying the interaction, that consent and comfort apply to animals too, and that cute doesn't always equal kind. And this might seem like a harmless or even fun activity, but when children are dressing up pets, especially without adult supervision, it's critical that they understand the animal's comfort level. This is a perfect teaching moment about empathy, boundaries, and the difference between what's fun for us and what's fair for them. So thinking about spending time alone with a pet, 98% of children with pets said they help with at least one care activity, such as feeding, playing, and cuddling. But let's take a closer look now at how often children are left unsupervised with their pets, especially dogs. Children who owned pets were asked how often they were left alone with their pets without an adult present. 70% of children said they were left alone with their pet at least once a week. 39% said every day. 31% said once a week or more. 13% said that they were never left alone with the pet, and 5% weren't sure. So this means that the majority of children are regularly left unsupervised with their animals. And this is especially important to consider when thinking about potential risks and what children do or do not know about reading animal behavior. So we can break that down by age and species, and this pattern did vary by age and pet type as well. So children 9 and older were more likely to be left alone with the pet daily, 42%, compared to younger children at 34%. Children with cats were more likely to be left alone with them every day, 47%, compared to children with dogs, 36%. So whilst cats and smaller pets may pose fewer risks, it's crucial to note that dogs were involved in 73% of the negative pet experiences and 44% of reported pet bites. So this suggests a need for increased awareness and education around supervision, especially for dogs. So why does this matter? As we've already said, children may not always recognize when a dog is feeling anxious, threatened, or overstimulated. Many dog bites occur in family environments, often during routine and supervised interactions like playing, feeding, or cuddling. And yet more than 1 in 3 children reported being left alone with their dog daily. So that really reinforces the need for us to teach children how to spot the signs of discomfort, such as moving away, freezing, or growling, and educating adults about when and how to supervise interactions, as well as providing tools that promote safe, positive relationships between children and dogs. This part of the data really stood out to us, not because it was surprising, but because it confirms, as Kerry was saying, that what many of the professionals in animal welfare and child safety have been saying for a long time. Regular and supervised interactions can be safe, but only if children are properly taught how to read their pet signals and if adults understand when to step in.
Great, thanks, Shelley. So let's look at lessons about learning around pets. So children who reported having a pet at home were asked what they had learned about how to behave around their chosen pet. So they could select from a list of possible lessons. The most commonly selected lessons were being kind and touching them gently, so with 74%, give them space when they are sleeping, 57%, and give them space when they are eating, so 58%. Only a small proportion of children said they hadn't been taught any of the listed lessons or didn't know. So that's good news for us here. When comparing across socioeconomic backgrounds, children in the lowest income households, so those earning under 25k within the family, were less likely to report being taught several of the lessons compared to those households earning over 50k. So to give you an example of this, we're looking at 62% of children from lower income households reported being taught to be kind and touch gently, compared to 79% of those from higher income households. So children who did not have a pet at home were asked the same question. So framed in a different way, so any pet rather than their own pet, their responses were consistently lower across all lesson types. So to be kind and touch them gently, 59% of non-pet owners versus 74% of pet owners. Giving them space when they are sleeping, 38% of non-pet owners versus 58% of pet owners. And then giving them space when they are sleeping, 34% of non-pet owners versus 57% of pet owners. So this suggests that direct experience with pets is linked to greater exposure to guidance on respectful and safe interactions.
So lastly, we wanted to know how children recognise when their pet is uncomfortable. So the children who lived with pets were asked how they know if their pet doesn't like what they're doing. They were provided with a list of behaviours and they were asked to choose as many options as they thought were applicable to their specific named pet. So 54% said that they know their pet doesn't like what they're doing when their pet moves away. 53% said that they know their pet doesn't like it when they wriggle to escape. And this was more common amongst cat and rabbit owners, with 61% of cat-owning children saying this about their cat. So only 5% of children said that their pet always likes what they're doing. And so these results show that there is decent awareness, because over half of children recognise their pets asking for more space. But there is also a lot more room to deepen that understanding, especially of species-specific animal communication and body language, and the way that children interact with their pets so that they can avoid creating discomfort for them.
So we're moving towards our conclusions. What have we learned? Children care deeply about animals, but their understanding varies. Experience matters. Children with pets are more empathetic and informed. Girls and children from wealthier and non-urban households tend to have more awareness, and there are clear opportunities to improve education, especially for non-pet owners and those in lower income communities. So we're planning and hope that this survey will be repeated every 2 years, helping us to track change over the time and then refine our programs. And we invite educators, charities, and community leaders to use this data and our free resources to better connect with children on animal welfare.
Thank you, Dave. So we're going to share some links to some resources in a moment, but first, you may have noticed that one of the most important themes that's emerged from our findings was around safety and children's interactions with dogs. So let's quickly recap some of the key points that we've heard today. So nearly 3/4 of children reported experiencing a negative interaction with a pet, and most of these were a dog. 1 in 5 children reported being bitten by a pet. And 44% of those children answered that it was a dog. Of those bitten, 63% saw a doctor and 7% required hospitalisation. And 70% of pet-owning children were left unsupervised with their pet on a regular basis, and over 1/3 alone with them on a daily basis. So what these statistics tell us is that routine interactions, even with a family dog, can often go wrong. And we knew that we couldn't just report on this and walk away. So we've already taken direct action. We've developed a dog safety webinar designed to help young learners understand how to stay safe around dogs at home and in public, what to do, what not to do, and if a dog seems uncomfortable, scared, or overstimulated, what they would do. So this especially is vital within households where dogs are left alone with children, or where dogs may be misunderstood as being playful or tolerant. In addition to the webinar, we've also created a child-friendly animation that will also launch later in June, on the 17th of June. And this teaches how to interact with dogs safely, whether it's on your own, or with a friend's dog or a stranger's dog, and the importance of giving dogs space, especially when they're eating or resting. So the animation is age appropriate, engaging, and grounded in the exact findings from the survey. And you can see a couple of stills here from our animation as well. So finally, we just want to thank you for your time today, really. But first, we've got a few links on the screen. So this link is to our Pet Education Partnership website. If you visit this, you'll find lots of free resources designed by PEP and the partner charities within PEP. And you'll see on our events section as well how you can sign up for our upcoming events. So we've got a dog safety event coming up for Northern Ireland and Scotland on the 17th and 19th of June, and then on the 18th and 19th of July, we've got it for England and for Wales. So thank you for your time today, but we do have time for a Q&A, so I hope that I can't see the questions yet, so I will stop sharing my screen, but I hope some questions have been coming through. It's still time to answer your questions, whether you want to put it in the chat box or through the questions section. We have had some sent in previously as well via email, which we can go through, while we just wait for some people to add more questions. Bear with us while we get those up. We have had a question come through the chat while we're waiting. So we mentioned about safe interactions requiring supervision from an adult and the child understanding body language. So when we mentioned the behaviours, children could recognise that an animal didn't enjoy the interaction. They seemed quite light stage behaviours, freezing, scratching, etc. At what age do we feel that children are able to understand the important subtle body language indicators? Anyone would like to take that one?
I think early years children can understand many of these points. So I would say it's probably around the 4 to 5 years old, possibly even younger.
I think as well, when it comes to like PEP and some of our own education programs, we do also like to focus on that 7 to 11. So like Dave said, I think young children can learn about their own body language and the pets around them when they're supported by an adult. But that stage kind of 7 to 11, they're really starting to understand a little bit more and develop further. So I think that's a really good opportunity to get it in there as early as possible, but keep building on it for when they're kind of that 7 to 11 and they're really understanding a little bit more about body language and how they behave and how that impacts pets around them.
Thank you. I've had a few more questions come in. So I'll be planning on doing this report every year, so that trends can be identified. So we will be doing this every other year. This one's been a long time coming. So the next one will be in 2027. So we will be trying to identify trends. We'll also be making sure that we've got a larger data set. I mean, 1,024 children this time was appropriate for our baseline, but we would like to increase that so that we can delve a bit deeper into certain areas, and particularly in Northern Ireland, where the figures were quite low in this one. How can we be involved with PEP? Shelley, would you like to take that one?
Just trying to unmute myself. So you can email the contact us email address that Anna showed earlier, and we are always looking for friends of PEP. So if you go to the website, the PEP website, and have a look there, you can see our friends of PEP that are already in existence. So if you wanted to get in touch with us, then we can get you set up on that. Otherwise, we would just ask you to share who we are to get people to download all our resources and make them aware of the sessions and events that we do in the future.
Thank you. So we have had a question around how many children were actually surveyed in Northern Ireland. I think we do have that percentage. If you bear with me, unless Beth knows it off the top of your head.
Not off the top of my head, but I will dig it out of here. So it was less than 50 for the total Northern Ireland sample size, which meant that we weren't able to draw any inferences looking within Northern Ireland at breaking things down. So we are hoping in future years to be able to draw a much larger overall sample size so that then all of the devolved nations can be more represented. But yeah, obviously more sample size costs more money. So fingers crossed for some more funding for next time.
And it was 3% of children that took part in the survey were from Northern Ireland. So can we share this for other charities to look at doing outside of the UK?
No reason why we can't. I would think it'd be a really good idea.
Brilliant. Were the negative experiences preset by the survey for children to choose, or did they have free choice in their responses? Just interested in what kind of behaviours are seen as negative and why. Example, a dog jumping up when excited. I think that's one for you, Beth.
Yeah, so yeah, they were preset, so they were a list. So a working group from across the charities came together to come up with all of the questions. So there were a lot of insights from across the charities that went into it. Of course, in future years, we'd love to be able to do focus groups with children and their parents ahead of launching the survey to be able to understand more about how they might interpret some of the questions, and even potentially do things like cognitive interviewing to understand their understanding of how the questions are posed. But yeah, great question, thanks.
Yeah, and we do have plans for our 2027 survey as well to do some focus groups. But of course, these have got to be age 11 plus. So this one we've entirely focused on age 7 to 11. And sorry, another question for you, Beth. That was it all the data that we use significantly, significant, statistically significant, sorry.
So all of the percentages which are shown as comparisons within the report will be statistically significant at the 0.05 level, so 95% confidence intervals. But all of the percentages that are produced in sort of just tables are just as they are descriptive stats. So yeah, feel free to shoot me any other questions that you have about
Coming from an animal
significant.
rescue environment, were any of the questions asked about where they got their pets from?
I don't believe there are any questions asked within this survey about where they were acquired from. It was just whether they'd pestered their parents to get their pets ahead of time and why it was that they were asking for their pet. But yeah, really interesting one that we could potentially include in future surveys, although there are surveys that do include this for specific pets. But of course, this is across all different species.
Thank you. And what are the chances of Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2 pet respect as part of the national curriculum? I think that's one for you, Dave.
It's something we've been campaigning for some years, and support is rising for it. Many of you will be aware that the Labour government is carrying out a review of the curriculum. We're waiting with bated breath to hear. I certainly was involved in at least 3 different submissions that were given into Parliament on this issue. It's going to be tricky. What it is about, and that's why I made a point about values education, is including animal welfare education in the citizenship and in the PSHE type scenarios. So it's something we will continue to push for.
And we've had a question that I think is probably directed at me. Has there been any attempt to align the findings of this survey with PDSA's PAW report to understand any conclusions that can be drawn across both sources and verify findings? Yep, so we've been really lucky to have the support of Emma Tipton from PDSA, who actually does all the statistic analysis for the PAW report. She's been involved in this project and helping us shape the questions and everything. So yeah, we will of course be looking at the PAW report data as well and drawing any conclusions that we can from it. And there is a little stat in from the PAW report as well in our report just around the number of pets in the UK. Considering the role of education officers and the level of trust from the students in these professions, I think it was 46%. Can we expect to see a rise in negative experiences when so many animal charities are moving towards pre-recorded digital delivery?
It's a very good question, and it's the reason why we wanted to carry out this survey, to really see what impact we are having, and hopefully it really is one of the chalices that we want to capture here, to be able to show impact. So can't answer this. This is a baseline. This is our baseline survey. In 2 years' time, we'll be able to look at that and see how our charities have changed their approaches and what PEP is doing.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, from a digital point of view, what's been amazing for us all in PEP actually, isn't it, is that accessibility sometimes.
Yeah.
So we can reach a lot more children than we may be able to reach in person, but we always try and do it in ways where, you know, we might be delivering, or we're using the teachers to tell stories or use case studies and really support them from a resource point of view. So I think we try our best to make sure that kind of any education we offer, whether it's in person or digital, it will have the most impact that it can do. So we're very aware, but it will be interesting, won't it, to do this survey again in a couple of years' time.
I think that kind of aligns what you're saying with what Dom's put in the chat as well, around deprived areas, more likely owning pets in those from more affluent areas, and also being less likely to recognise animals as having feeling compared to those affluent areas. So we've talked about this a lot, haven't we, sort of in PEP, and we often feel like it's a bit of a postcode lottery, I guess, and it's about providing equal access. And that's one thing that we're really, really trying to do within PEP, is think about how can we get into those areas that probably don't have the same access as different areas, making our resources accessible for all.
I think as well from PDSA perspective, we've been running our Pet Rose School Award program now since 2018, and it's been really eye-opening to see the investment that we actually get from the teachers, that when they're involved in something that requires them to do pre and post work and teach about different topics, that it's really nice to see that involvement from the teacher and the passion that the teacher brings to making sure that that education is embedded rather than a one-off experience as well. So it does really work both ways. We have had a question about our animation and whether it would be okay for people to share it amongst the sector. So yeah, absolutely. It'll be on our website from the 17th of June, so it'll be available for anybody to download and share. We'd love to get it out there as much as we possibly can, I'm sure. We've worked really hard on this animation, trying to cover lots of different aspects of dog safety, and yeah, we'd absolutely love for people to share it, so please do.
We've got a question in the chat box as well, saying, thank you so much for this presentation. It's really interesting. Thank you, Amber. As an animal behaviourist working in London, I was really interested to see that children had a lower percentage of describing animals having feelings. I was wondering what might help me to convey that our pets' feelings matter aside from video resources, and whether there are any indicators as to why these urban environments, despite being so full of pets, may be underperforming. It's another one we've talked about a lot, isn't it, as a result of this? So in terms of, I guess, of how we can help you, I would say have a look at the Pet Education Partnership website, see if there's any sort of downloadable resources that you can do with the children there. In terms of, guess, of indicators, I think really it's kind of what Dave was saying as well. For us, this is a baseline test. So it's a starting point for us to think about why that might be in the future when we carry out these surveys in the future.
Yeah, I think that one's such a difficult one because it is so multifaceted, and it's potentially not just to do with pets. But yeah, I mean, we could all make guesses on why these things are interlinked, but ultimately for this time around, because it was just our first one, we only did descriptive statistics just to look at the patterns. So we haven't done any modelling yet to look at causation, although that is potentially on the cards for a few years' time. So yeah, it would be really, really interesting to try and disentangle some of these patterns. And yeah, it's echoing a lot of the things that we see around dog bites in deprived areas, and yeah, the reasoning for that.
I think just some kind of simple ways, if you're engaging with children, and many of our resources include this, is that storytelling, like from the pet's point of view as well. So sometimes that can really help encourage children to think about, put themselves in their shoes, close your eyes, imagine this, how would you feel? And that can just be a simple, quick way of maybe bringing it a bit more to life for them, and maybe they can relate a little bit more. So, Shelley said we've got loads of resources around that kind of type of inclusive education there, so that can be a great way to help.
So how were children aged 7 to 11 selected and surveyed through YouGov?
So that one's probably a question for me. So yeah, so we worked with YouGov, who have an existing panel of UK adults, consists of millions of adults, and they previously opted into the panel, and therefore they provided their socio-demographic data. So then YouGov are able to subsample from this big panel in terms of finding people who have children aged 7 to 11, and then they can stratify that to be representative nationally of UK adults, so by their age, gender, region, social class, education. And so then the invited adults who are on the panel then sort of began the survey with their children. So they entered how many pets they owned, what type of pet they were, and then the name of the specific pet that they'd be answering about. And then it was over to the children to answer the questions about that specific pet if they owned one.
Thank you, Beth. I've had another question for the Q&A. So, how would we bridge the relationship between human emotion and pet emotion and just general empathy, compassion, and emotional intelligence?
I think I was trying to make reference to this in the values education piece. Lots of the resources that you'll find on the PET website do ask young people to think about their own emotions and their own feelings. Can they name them? And then think about how these might apply to animals as sentient creatures. I think we do a lot of work on trying to establish sentience as an understanding, particularly in the 7 to 11 years age group. We know that they are ethically aware and want to find out more.
So really interesting question in the chat of, has this initiative taken over education across the animal welfare charities, like the fact that we all know about Dogs Trust's current restructure? So I think I'll kick off by saying absolutely not. We all have our own existing education programs, highly successful education programs, and Pet Education Partnership is very much on top of the work that we do. So it's a bit like a separate education program where we all come together and share resources. I think the only real effect it's had on our individual programs is that we all use consistent language now. So we all make sure that we're saying exactly the same thing. So if a child had a talk from Blue Cross one week and Dogs Trust the next week, that they're not saying, like, at one point we had people being a tree or being a statue and stuff if dogs were running up to them, and children might get confused. So there's consistent approach across all now. If anybody wants to add anything to.
Okay, I
Yeah,
think that's a good answer.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the dog animation is a key piece of that. So we all offer some dog education out there for young people, but this animation is actually we have strength when we come together. And for us all to be able to share one key piece of information is such a big step forward for animal welfare and education teams within charities. So PEP is very much a complement to all of our own charities and our own education work that we do.
But it very much feels like an extra team. Yeah. Okay, so we've had a lovely comment in the chat. So it's heartwarming to see that children wanted visits at school as much as videos. Working within the education team at RSPCA and at our base at NW, where the results showed lowest percentage for children recognising animals had feelings. The results shown here also help us know that we've been delivering across the whole team to meet needs already and can grow to do more. They agree a combined approach and not moving away from in-person work is essential. Thank you for sharing the results. So thank you for your lovely comment. If anybody's got any more questions, we've got a few more minutes left if you want to ask any more.
I think we might have, sorry if we have covered this one, but it might have been covered in the answer to the other one. We've got a question in the chat saying, do we know what the children understood by feelings? A child who doesn't think rabbits feel lonely might still think they feel pain. I wonder if some of them didn't fully think that pain is a feeling. So I guess that kind of goes back to what you were saying, Dave, isn't it, about, identifying with them, how a individual might feel as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I think for the future, obviously, we'd like to do a lot more like focus groups and interviews with children and their parents to see what they actually understand by the specific wording of the question so that we can make them as clear as possible. So yeah, that's a semantic one, but an important one. And yeah, all of the questions were formulated with sort of age-appropriate language in mind, so that children would understand what we meant. But yeah, there are nuances there.
How do we plan to tailor materials for lower income or underserved communities? So I can take this. So while all of our resources are freely available to everyone, we recognise that universal access doesn't always equal equitable access. So across the 8 partner charities that are involved in PEP, we're all committed to reaching as many learners as we possibly can. And one of our aims is to reach every child in the UK. So we do advocate sector-wide for the removal of the postcode lottery in order to access animal welfare education. So equity is a wider challenge and it goes beyond PEP, but we're absolutely determined to do our part and to try and make education as accessible as we possibly can.
Think what Evie said as well, you know, that importance of that in-person and digital offering as well. So, you know, we can reach more children often through digital, but children might be experiencing digital poverty or might not be able to access anything online. So having both of those mechanisms for us as Big PEP and the charities is really important as well, and does make us a lot more accessible.
Yeah, thank you. We've just got a few more minutes to wrap up. If anybody has got anything, we've had one pop in now. That is there any view for looking into research for children with additional needs within education, as to not miss this group out? I think,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, isn't it, for us to consider?
Yeah.
yeah, we'd absolutely like to do that. And of course, when we got the flexibility of having focus groups and everything, it'll be a lot easier to be able to do that. Watch your space for 2027. I think if that's all the questions that we've got coming through, we'd just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody so much for joining us for this first webinar. We'll enjoy doing this every other year. So we hope that you'll be able to join us in 2027. We will share the recording around via email. And if you haven't had a chance to look at our survey, please do. It's on our website. It's also been emailed out to you as well. You can join us again tomorrow if you wish. We'll be doing it again at 4 o'clock, speaking to educators. But otherwise, we'll hopefully share our dog safety webinars with you in the coming weeks. And if you could help us share it, we would massively appreciate it. Thank you so much for everybody joining us.